Mookie Magic. Dodgers have won it all. High fly ball into right field. She is gone. He struck him out. 2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walker Buehler.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by old friend, new friend, Daniel Starkand, back in the 2020 days. Walker Buehler not cooked. Dave Roberts, all-time great manager. Daniel, 2-1, the Dodgers lead in the NLCS.
Yeah, it's good to be back on here with you. It's been a little while, but the Dodgers gave us a good one to talk about, 8-0. That's always fun. Take a 2-1 series lead here. So yeah, let's break it all down.
Tons to get to. As always, we appreciate everybody that is filtering in from Facebook, from YouTube, from Twitter. Tons to talk about tonight. Again, as the Dodgers beat the Mets 8-0 to take a 2-1 lead in the NLCS. Daniel, this game, they made us sweat for most of this one. Kiké Hernández seemed to put it out of reach. Ryan Brazier seemed to put it back into reach, but eventually Shohei Ohtani and Max Muncy put this win away for good. And the Dodgers have their third shutout in, I believe, their last 5 postseason games. So pitching continues to get it done.
Yeah, and look, outside of that, the grand slam that Nat gave up in game 2, this has been, a pretty flawless start to the series for the pitching staff, and it goes back to the Padres series, of course. So all the guys that you trust have been coming through, and it started with Walker Buehler tonight. Of course, things got a little dicey early, like you were saying, like the Dodgers, had some chances to score early and kind of put this away even sooner, and they kind of let the Mets hang around. But Walker Buehler, shut the door pretty much every opportunity the Mets had. I know he only went 4, but, that was big there just to keep them off the scoreboard and get it to the bullpen with a lead. So, yeah, I mean, everyone, pretty much everyone contributed offensively, and the pitching staff did their job. So just a great night overall.
Yeah, Teoscar Hernandez and Gavin Lux, the only 2 starters that did not have hits in this one. On the pitching side, again, we'll get to Walker Buehler, 4 shutout innings from him. Kopech does his job. Brazier sort of does his job, ultimately does his job. Treinen, fantastic, and even Ben Kasparius does a great job of not only looking good, but saving the rest of those guys, Evan Phillips, Daniel Hudson, Anthony Bonda, from needing to be used in what could be 3 consecutive games that the bullpen is needed. And so great stuff all around. Let's get to a few of these super chats. As always, Carlos saying the 2 OGs, just like old times 2020 vibes. We're going for it, Carlos. Right. We're trying to bring back those 2020 vibes, and it's hard not to be optimistic, Daniel. We're not getting ahead of ourselves, but This was a big game. They kept throwing the stat up 70% of the time. The team that wins this game ends up going on to win the series. We heard that in the NLDS after the Dodgers won game 1. We also heard the opposite stat when the Padres won game 3. So I don't know what to make of any of these stats, but the Dodgers looking ahead, Yamamoto in game 4, potentially Jack Flaherty in game 5. This guy, Walker Buehler, if it does end up going to a game 7, home field advantage back in the Dodgers' favor. It does feel like things are setting up in a way that again, I'm not taking anything for granted, but it's hard not to feel pretty good about where the Dodgers are at.
I will say it's not quite 2020 vibes. I got a lot less hair, this time around. But yeah, and of course in 2020 they went down 3-1 in the NLCS, so they're obviously in a much different position here. Up 2-1, like you said, this is kind of a pivotal game here. After the Dodgers drop game 2 at home, things could get dicey if you lose tonight, go down 2-1 with 2 more games in New York. So just the fact that they were able to get this win, and now their pitching is set up well for the next couple nights. Like you said, they didn't use some of their key relievers. They do have, starters going in the next 2 games. So even though you're not expecting necessarily a ton of length out of Yamamoto and even Flaherty, the fact that, they weren't, they didn't have to use Phillips and Daniel Hudson and Bonda tonight, I thought was huge. So it was a great, obviously you don't expect stress-free playoff games, and this wasn't stress-free by any means, but as far as playoff games go, this is how you write up the script, no doubt.
Yeah, and even the guys they did use, as we'll talk about, Kopech, only 12 pitches, Treinen, 11 pitches. How about this? 23 pitches thrown by those two guys, 19 of them were for strikes. So just filling up the strike zone and getting the job done. Lucas says, Buehler set the tone. Best Dodgers show around. We appreciate Lucas. We appreciate you for joining us. Thanks for the super chat. And yes, we're going to get to Walker Buehler here, and we'll go straight to the next super chat. Cordenas says, biggest moment of the game was Walker striking out Lindor with the bases loaded. Is he back? Only 6 more wins needed. Let's talk about Walker Buehler. He finishes this game with only 4 innings, but just 3 hits, 2 walks, most important number of the night, no runs, and 6 strikeouts, a season high 18 whiffs. There's a lot of good. I would say, in an effort to be fair, there was some concern with Walker Buehler as well. But give me your overall impression of what we saw from Walker Buehler tonight.
I would say this is probably the best that his stuff has looked pretty much all season, I'd say.
Yeah.
The breaking stuff was working. He didn't throw the fastball too much, which is kind of the pitch that has been getting hit this season. So I think they had a good plan coming in. And like you said, it wasn't perfect. Like his command was not great. Like only, 51 strikes on 90 pitches.
Strikes.
Ideally, you would like a little more than that. And especially, like, I think, the fact that his stuff was playing up as well as it was, like, he could have probably pounded the zone, a little more. Like, he didn't need a nibble or try to get guys, to chase as much as he did. Because I think the way his stuff was playing up, like, he could have gotten, swing and misses inside the zone. But understandable given, how much he has struggled, that he didn't want to just pepper the zone necessarily. But so the command was a little off. He did work himself into a little bit of trouble with the walks, but credit to him, he was able to work out of it. Like this commenter here said, that Lindor at bat was unquestionably the biggest of the game. Like if he gives up a few runs there, who knows, what kind of outing he would have had. He might not have been much, much longer.
Yeah.
And B, like it could have been a totally different game. So that was huge. It's good to see him get some swing and misses. Obviously, that has been a struggle for him this season. And even if you go back to the Padres game, where I thought he pitched pretty well, still no strikeouts. And that's kind of what hurt him. Like if he would have been able to get a strikeout or two in that second inning of that game, then maybe he wouldn't have given up the 6th spot there. So it definitely was nice to see him put away some hitters tonight.
Yeah, we talked, Anthony and I, on last night's show. He had 10 2-strike counts against the Padres and finished with 0 strikeouts. But we said one of the reasons for optimism with Buehler were 2 things. Well, I should say the 2 reasons for optimism. One is you can't get much worse batted ball luck than he had against the Padres, especially in that second inning that killed him last time out. But the second thing was the Padres strike out less than any team in Major League Baseball. The Mets are middle of the pack. They strike out more than even the Dodgers strike out. And so tonight, in the bottom of the first, I was fascinated because he got an 0-2 count in the first inning and struck out the first guy and then struck out the second guy. So twice he gets to 2 strikes, and both times he's able to put those guys away. But to Cordenas' point, let's talk about that second inning. It's a 1-out walk. It's an infield single that Tommy Edman tries to make a great play and can't. No disrespect there. That's a tough one. Then Walker Buehler loads the bases with the number 9 hitter due up. Strikeout to end the inning, including a 3-2 swing and miss from Francisco Lindor. He had 11 whiffs and 4 strikeouts in the first 2 innings alone. So we're talking about all of the stuff, and the stuff was fantastic, and the results were great. And I'm a big believer in, like, if we're going to crush the guy because he gave up 6 earned runs, even if he pitches well, then we can't crush the guy when he puts up 0 earned runs, even if there are some flaws. I will say, Daniel, there were some flaws. Just 51 strikes for Walker Buehler. It felt like he was kind of all over the place at times. So the stuff was better, but the command wasn't. I'm curious to see if he does get another start at some point this postseason, which there would need to be a disaster for him not to. What we see next time. Do we have to choose between those 2 things, do you think, for Walker Buehler? Like, is there a game in him when he has the stuff, the swing and miss we saw tonight, and a little more control and command to stay inside of the strike zone?
Yeah, I think it definitely is in him. And I think we've been seeing, like, this progress goes back longer than just the last 2 postseason starts. Like, he was starting to make progress towards the end of the regular season. And like you said, it's not perfect by any means, but I do think this is a guy who, it's still Walker Buehler at the end of the day. Like the guy, I know he's coming back from a major surgery, but the guy knows how to pitch. And I do think it's going to take time for him to get back to the pitcher he once was, or at least like close to it. I don't know if he'll ever be that same guy quite again, but I do think it would have been insane to just write him off after, half a season's worth of innings coming back from his second Tommy John surgery after missing 2 years. Like it was always going to take him some time to kind of get back on track, to figure out, what type of pitcher he's going to be, because he has to be a different guy now. Like that's no secret at this point. And I do think, he's making progress there and he's working his way back. So like you said, like we have seen starts where he has had good command, but the stuff hasn't necessarily looked great. And then tonight the stuff looks incredible and the command wasn't great. So I do think it is in him to put it all together. Obviously, we'll see if that ends up happening. Like he only might get one or two more cracks at it here, but definitely encouraging stuff from him. And I know you would love more length there, but if you told me at the beginning of the night Walker Buehler is giving you 4 shutout innings tonight, like I would have taken that all day.
I'm curious, any issues in your mind with not going to Walker in the 5th inning? It was the top of the order. Dave Roberts actually said on television 3 batters before, hey, he's not going to face Lindor. They had Kopech warming. The Mets make the opposite decision. They leave Severino out there for the 5th inning to face the top of the Dodgers order. It almost bites them. He doesn't end up finishing that inning. But I saw some people saying 4 innings, no runs, and we're pulling this guy. Any issues from your end on that decision?
Absolutely 0 issues from me there. Like you said, it was the 3rd time coming up. So at the time, I think it was still 2-0. So you don't want to, it only takes 1 or 2 swings and all of a sudden it's a tie game. So I think at that point it was the right time to pull him. 90 pitches is a lot. There was a lot of high stress pitches mixed in there. Like he had to pitch out of a couple jams. So I thought that was the right time to pull him, go to Kopech there. And obviously we saw how it worked out. Like they ended up shutting him out the rest of the night. Offense tacks on some more late and you don't have to use all your high leverage guys. So overall, I thought Dave pretty much did everything perfectly tonight. Like I didn't have any issues with pulling him there after that 4th inning.
Tell me if I'm crazy here, because I'm connecting a couple dots that end up leading to Kiké Hernandez's home run. And as a guy who pitched in college and just as somebody who obviously watches a lot of baseball. So the Mets go back to Severino from the 5th for the 5th. Freddie with a 2-out single, Max Muncy walks. Reed Garrett ends up needing to come into the game in the top of the 5th inning in order to end that one. He does, strikes out Teoscar Hernandez on a really bad looking at bat from Teoscar, which was a repeated theme. Well, then Garrett stays in for the bottom of the, for the top of the 6th. 2 outs, Edman singles, the balk, and then the Kiké Hernandez home run. I really want, I'm always nervous anytime a reliever has to come into a game, end an inning, sit down for a little while, and then come back out for the next. Is it possible there's a correlation between the Dodgers forcing Severino out of the game in the 5th, Garrett having to come in early, and then with 2 outs in the very next inning, he's already gotten his 3 outs, but then he gives up an Edman single and the Kiké home run? Any connection between those two things in your mind?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there could be a connection there for sure. Like the extra up down there is not ideal, especially when you're talking about like a cold night. Like you said, he goes and gets Teo out, and then he goes and sits in the dugout for 10 minutes. And I know he did come out and get 2 quick outs there, but credit to Tommy Edman, who's been getting hits left and right in this series. Great to see. And then Kiké puts the big swing on what looked like a mistake pitch. Like that pitch was either not far enough up or too much up, depending on where he wanted it. But that was one right in the happy zone for Kiké. So I definitely think that could be correlated. And look, that's one of their best bullpen arms there. So the fact that you get a look at him in game 2, you get another look at him tonight. That's good to see and should only bode well, moving forward in the series as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple more super chats to get to. Thank you to the almost 1,900 people who are in here already on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. Ravensmoreland says, good to be on the right side of a wacky, arbitrary strike zone. I'll say 2 things. I think it was wacky. I'll give the guy credit. It didn't feel all that arbitrary. It was one spot that he continuously was calling pitches that were a few inches off of the plate on the left side of the screen if you were watching on TV. I really struggle with this, Daniel, because I'll say up front, I don't think this at the end of the day benefited one team more than other. I think there were moments where both teams got really bad calls in their favor in really key moments. I tweeted this out as to why I find this so disappointing and why it's so frustrating to watch. Mookie Betts in the first inning, it's a full count. he gets rung up on a pitch that is clearly outside. And some people might say it's the first inning. There's nobody on base. Who cares? If you go look at run probability stuff, and I tweeted this out, if Mookie Betts does walk and there's a runner on first base with 1 out, and this has no, like, this is just based on stats. This has nothing to do with the fact that the Dodgers have pretty good hitters coming up after him. But the odds of the Dodgers scoring in that inning with a runner on first and 1 out are about 27%. And the expected runs is 0.5. With the strike 3 call instead, it lowers the 27% odds of scoring to 6.7% odds of scoring. The expected runs from 0.5 to 0.1. In games, Daniel, that don't end 8-0, that's not insignificant. So again, I think it evened itself out by the end. I'm sure Mets fans would probably disagree, but that's why I find those moments so irritating, because the margins this time of year are so thin.
Yeah, and I tweeted it, like, we need to get that challenge system in there. Like, I don't care in the regular season, like, whatever, but in these big playoff games where every at-bat matters, like you said, every pitch matters, like, you can't, like, that's, to me, that should be unacceptable, like, a miss like that, and it's not like it was all that close either, and credit to Mookie, like, that should be a great take and a great walk in the first inning or whatever it was, and to start, getting the offense going, and instead, he's walking back to the dugout for strike 3, so I don't think, the challenge system, they've been doing it in the minor leagues. Like, I don't think it adds all that much time to the game. No, and
it's instantaneous. It's instantaneous.
Exactly. And the fact that it could, fix some of these calls that are just absolutely massive calls. Like, I think it's a no-brainer to me. It should have been in a long time ago. And at this point, I don't know how much longer we could keep doing it. Like I said, I don't care about the regular season. Like, whatever it is, what it is. But in these big playoff games, to me, that's just not good enough,
Yeah. If not for a bad strike 3 call and an incredible play from Francisco Lindor, by the way, Mookie Betts would have been 2 for 3 with a walk in this game. Instead, he ends up 1 for 4. So some bad luck for Mookie. Again, it ends up not mattering for the Dodgers, thankfully. Ivan says Muncy has to stay hot and be the X factor for the rest of the postseason. I make a lot of bad predictions, Daniel. Max Muncy is my X factor for this series. I'm feeling pretty good about.
Yeah, so far so good. I think he got on base
2 for 2 with 3 walks.
2 for 2, 3 walks, a home run. He got the single there that loaded the bases, and in the middle inning somewhere they didn't end up scoring, but that was a good at-bat as well. So this is the most locked in he's looked in a while here, and I agree. Like, if he's hitting like this, the Dodgers are a tough team to beat, just because that's like adding, like, a locked in Max Muncy is like adding a 4th MVP to this lineup, and especially when you look at Freddie as he's up there battling and he's getting a few hits, like, to his credit, but he's clearly not, the Freddie Freeman we're used to right now. So the fact that Max is, picking up that the slack there for Freddie is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And look, we saw what happened to the Dodgers offense when Muncy was out in the middle of the season. That was kind of a turning point. And so sticking him back up in the middle of the lineup, he was up batting 4th tonight. I imagine that's not going to change. You get on base all 5 times, you're not getting moved back down in the order. And so Max Muncy could be a guy that continues to come up in huge spots there. Big Bob Johnson says Shohei needs to bat second to unlock him, Doc. Let's go. 6 more wins. I mean, the guy did hit a 3-run home run tonight that looked like a freaking tee shot to the moon. So I think for tonight, maybe we leave him where he is. What do you think, Daniel?
Yeah, I don't think you need to make, big changes like that after an 8-0 win. Like, maybe if we're an elimination game or whatever, then maybe you could talk about it. But even then, like, I still want Shohei Ohtani getting the most at bats on this team, and that's part of why I like him in that leadoff spot, because if it's the late innings and the lineup's turning over, like, the guy I want up there is Shohei. Like, even if he has been struggling, like, whatever, if you want to call it that, like, but obviously the numbers have been weird. Like, with no one on base, he's done absolutely nothing, and then with guys on base, he's impossible to get out. But you'll take that. Like, if he wants to throw up a crooked number like once every 2 games, that's going to help the Dodgers win a lot. And I do think obviously those numbers will even out. Like, it's not going to stay like that. Of course, that's just baseball for you. But I mean, he hit that ball to the moon tonight. So I don't think you need to do anything to unlock Shohei. I think he's fully unlocked.
Yep. A couple more of these based on some lineup construction. Carlos says, hear me out. Tommy Edman, then Ohtani, then Betts, then Friedman. And then we had the Lucas and Sadie show. Thoughts on the lineup construction tonight. Max getting more turns versus righties was a great move. We kind of hinted, Carlos sent that before we started this conversation about where Shohei should bat. But in your estimation, is this the lineup that the Dodgers should be trotting out tomorrow? Exactly the same lineup?
Well, I will say tomorrow there's going to be a lefty on the mound. Jose Quintana is probably going to start for the Mets. So you're probably, Muncy might be moved down a little.
Okay.
Gavin Lux will probably be out of the lineup. So it won't be the exact same. But I do think if a righty's on the mound, you probably like Max in that 4-hole. At least Teo's been struggling a little, which, he's due for a nuke any day now. So it's not like I'm worried about him by any means. But I do think with Max Muncy being as locked in as he is, like if a righty's on the mound, I want him in that 4 spot for sure.
So is Teoscar and Muncy, are you just swapping those guys? Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, we're not changing anything there. Does it become Teoscar, Muncy, I imagine Smith?
Probably Kiké. Probably Kiké, up a little higher. I know he batted.
Do you move Kiké into the 4 spot? This sounds crazy to say out loud, but like in all seriousness, against the lefty, is Kiké Hernandez hitting cleanup tomorrow the way Teoscar looked tonight? I think you could make a case.
I wouldn't hate it. I mean, whatever it is, that I think the 4, 5, 6 should probably be some combination of Teoscar, Kiké, and Muncy. At the end of the day, like we could talk lineup construction all day, and if guys are performing up and down the lineup, it doesn't really matter if we're being honest. Like it is fun to talk about, but like I don't think changing the lineup or whatever, like that's not always going to get guys going. And obviously, when guys, after an 8-0 win, you probably want to keep a lot of things the same. Like I know there are going to be some changes just because of lefties on the mound, but other than that, like I would just kind of keep rolling with what you've been doing. I don't think they need any sort of big changes right now.
It is interesting because I joked about how the big moment, everyone wanted Will Smith moved down. And then, of course, in the first inning, he comes up in a big spot, no matter how far they move him. But it is worth pointing out that the guys who were batting 5th and 6th in the Dodgers order tonight had 6 plate appearances with runners in scoring position. That's Teoscar Hernandez and Gavin Lux. Obviously, Lux's number went up because Teoscar couldn't do anything with runners in scoring position in front of him. But there is a reason why some of these spots tend to matter more. But I'm with you. 8-0 game. Let's not try and reinvent the wheel here. Jonathan says Dodgers in 5. Many people are saying this. Is Daniel Starkand saying this? Dodgers in 5?
So we did the show the other night, and that was when I kind of made my first prediction. It was after the Game 1 win. So basically what I said on that show was going into the series, my prediction was Dodgers in 6. But then after that Game 1 win, I was kind of feeling myself a little. I did say on the show that I was amending it to Dodgers in 5. Obviously, that was kind of instantly not looking so great after the Game 2 win. But I do think the way it sets up, you got Yamamoto on the mound tomorrow, Flaherty after. You're not seeing Manaea in either of those 2 games, who's obviously the Mets, best pitcher right now. I do think it sets up well for the Dodgers to close this out in 5, which would be ideal just because Game 6, you're looking at probably a bullpen game at home, and they have Manaea on the mound. So ideally, you'd like to avoid that. So I do think tomorrow will really decide it. Like if the Dodgers could come out with the same intensity tomorrow and win that and take a 3-1 lead, I do think they close it out in 5. Obviously, if they lose tomorrow, then it's guaranteed to come back to LA for a Game 6. But I am feeling confident. You never know with this team. Like we've seen, them lay plenty of eggs in the postseason, but they're just, at the end of the day, they're a lot more talented than this Mets team. Like coming off that Padres series where it felt like there was like 4 or 5 bats in that lineup that you were terrified of. Like that's just not the case with this Mets lineup. It's really just Lindor and Vientos right now, and I guess like Pete Alonso maybe, but he hasn't done a whole lot. So I do think the way it sets up with the Dodgers pitching, they should be able to close this out in 5.
Well, and even Lindor, I believe in this series is like 1 for 12 or something like that. It has not been 1 for 11, I believe, Lindor in this series after an 0 for 4. Of course, the 1 was a home run. So it's worth pointing that out. Kevin says, chances we win one of the next 2 with Yamamoto and Flaherty. Let me ask you this real quick. There is a debate that's already happening preemptively about Game 5. We now know that the Dodgers could theoretically get back to Los Angeles for Game 6. Like the Dodgers can't lose before coming back to Los Angeles. We know that much. The debate is going to be, if you get to a Game 5, does Jack Flaherty pitch? Excuse me. When you get to Game 5, does Jack Flaherty pitch? The argument in favor is that he's going to be on normal rest, and he's way better of a much better option than a bullpen game based on the current construction of the bullpen, and presumably after 3 consecutive games in 3 days. The flip side would be, if you were to lose game 5 with Flaherty pitching, you probably don't feel nearly as great coming back to Los Angeles, knowing you have a bullpen game in 6 and then Buehler in 7. For you, is it early enough? Is it too early to make a decision on what you do with Flaherty, or are you ready to say Yamamoto in 4, Flaherty in 5? I'll take my chances.
I think it's too early to say. Like, I think you need to see, first of all, like who wins tomorrow's game, and of course, like, how does your pitching usage look? Like, if you, let's say Yamamoto only gives you like 3 innings and it's a close game, so you're using all your leverage guys, then you're probably not going to run a bullpen game the day after that. If some of these guys pitch 2 days in a row and others maybe, like, let's say Evan Phillips, who didn't pitch today, like maybe he throws 30 pitches tomorrow, you probably don't feel great about him, giving you any sort of length the next day. So I do think, we got to see how it plays out. But I think it's totally fine to go Flaherty in game 5, no matter what, just because you have, like, even if it does come back to LA for a game 6, you have the off day after that. So in theory, you should have a rested pen for game 6. So if they come back up 3-2, even though technically the Mets have the pitching advantage there with Manaea on the mound versus a bullpen game for the Dodgers, I do think if you have a rested bullpen, like, we still feel really good about the Dodger bullpen. I know, Landon Knack didn't exactly have the best outing in game 2. And I would guess if it is a game 6 bullpen game, the plan probably wouldn't be to go to Landon Knack in the second inning. Yet, like, that game's going to be a little more important. That game's going to be a little more important than, game 2 was. So I would guess, the plan would be just a straight bullpen game there. But I think it's fine to go Flaherty game 5. He'll be on regular rest. He should be, nice and rested and good to go. Obviously, he pitched great in game 1, so you feel confident with him on the mound. So, I think that should be the plan. But you don't need to make these decisions now. Like, let's see how tomorrow goes. And then you could assess from there.
I think it'll be interesting if the bullpen isn't overly used and the Dodgers win tomorrow, to see if the Dodgers get aggressive with Flaherty and just try and close this thing out, or if they try and save him for a little bit. There is a little bit of a break heading into the World Series if the Dodgers were to get there as well. I haven't done exactly the math, but I think there's like 2 days after a potential game 7 before the World Series would start. So if the series were to end in 5 or 6, there would still be time for guys, who potentially pitch game 6 to be ready for the beginning of the next series, but we're getting way ahead of ourselves. To answer your question, Kevin, very good chances the Dodgers win one of the next 2, especially if Yamamoto and Flaherty pitch. Ravens Moreland, foul pole spooked and moved for that Ohtani bomb. Was there any fear in you, Daniel, that ball was going to get called foul? Because there was no chance that was getting reviewed and overturned no matter what they called.
I feel like those ones, and he hit it so high, like it is really hard to tell just because it's like over the foul pole. I honestly thought it did look kind of foul, but like you said, like, that's a tough one to overturn when they call it a home run on the field. And honestly, like, I know, the game was kind of a laugher at that point, but let's not forget, like, before Ohtani hits that home run, Daniel Hudson was warming up for the 8th inning, and presumably Evan Phillips behind him for the 9th. So even though it didn't, win them the game, that home run was huge because it allowed the Dodgers to use Ben Kasperius for those final 2 innings and save some of their, big time bullpen arms.
Yeah, it's a great point that you make because, again, the Mets don't score. So 4-0 by all accounts would have stood. But Daniel Hudson, who pitched game 1 and then was unavailable for game 2, I was very glad not to have to use him tonight because the Dodgers bullpen is very good. But with Vesia down, Brazier struggling a little bit, the bullpen is shrinking as far as the guys that you trust the later this gets. And Daniel Hudson is either in that group or very close to in that group. And you need to preserve those guys at all costs. And so Ohtani's home run allowed them to do it. Credit to Dave Roberts for not taking any chances, going to Ben Kasperius, and then credit to Ben Kasperius for getting the job done tonight. TJ Smithson says Tommy Edman, solid defense, and the bat is solid. Can't imagine the postseason without him. Look, he's the guy that has... Nobody's talking about the fact that Miguel Rojas is unavailable for this series because Tommy Edman is hitting, Kiké is hitting, and his flexibility, Kike's flexibility, is what allows the Dodgers to do that. And oh, by the way, he's leading the team in batting average so far in the NLCS.
Yeah, he's just a ball player. Like, there's no other way to describe him. I've been saying that for a while now. Like, that trade is looking like one of Friedman's all-time best. Like, the fact that they got Tommy Edman, who's under club control for next year. Let's not forget that. And Michael Kopech. Oh, by the way, he's also under club control for next year. And the only real main piece they gave up was Miguel Vargas. Like, that's that was an insanely good trade. And yeah, it's great to see Tommy, in this playoff setting. He obviously missed most of the regular season. So at the time of the trade, we weren't exactly sure what we were going to get from this guy. But ever since he's came back, he's just been massive. Like the versatility, the bat to ball skills, like could drop down a bunt if you need, like runs the base as well. He just kind of does a little bit of everything. And that's a great guy to have on your roster.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He's been huge. John Bleeding Blue, Ohtani, 17 hits in his last 20 at bats with runners in scoring position. There's no explanation for why this guy is the worst hitter in the world when there's nobody on, and the greatest hitter of all time when there's running. I mean, like, it literally makes no sense, Daniel, and yet it continues to happen.
Yeah, and look, let's go back to the beginning of the regular season when all the talk was this guy can't do anything with runners in scoring position. Yep. So the flip has, or the switch has, clearly flipped there. But I think it's more just, coincidence more than anything. Like, I don't think there's, like, this isn't going to last forever. Obviously, it's an incredible run he's on, like 17 for 20. Like, that doesn't even feel real. Like, you can't even do that in a video game, honestly.
Yeah.
And so it is incredible. Obviously, we do want to see him get on base to maybe start a game, or when no one is on. Like, we'd love that too. But the big spots, he's come up big every time. So that's what you want to see.
I just think about the fact that if Ohtani had 4 hits and 5 at bats with runners in scoring position, we would all be losing our minds. He's done that and then some 4 consecutive 5 plate appearance in a row. Like 4 for 5 only gets you to 16 for 20. This guy's 17 for 20, and it's insane.
And I think this streak goes back to in Miami when he reached 50-50. I'm pretty sure that's when it started, and he's kind of carried it through. So this is basically a month-long stretch where the guy literally has not gotten out with runners in scoring position.
It's insane. It's insane. Ravens wants to know, Kiké goodbye wave t-shirt coming. I couldn't tell, was he waving to the bullpen or was he waving to the ball that he hit out?
Let's just say both, I guess.
Yeah. I'm here for all of it. With Kiké, everything is on the table. Like, there's lots of guys that would be like, well, surely that wasn't that. But Kiké and Max Muncy, I think everything's on the table. I mean, it's like Walker Buehler. Like, he strikes out Lindor, and he's just dropping MFs for whoever wants one. Like, who wants this? I'll look over at JD Martinez, swing the bat. Lindor, you want some of this? Like, whatever. He's just screaming at whoever wants to listen. They got a few of those guys on the team, and I kind of respect it.
Yeah, no doubt. And we saw a little bit of it in the Padres series. Jack Flaherty is another guy who has a little bit of that in him, of course.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
And Walker Buehler, I mean, when Walker Buehler, earlier this season, when he wasn't pitching well, there wasn't a lot of talking. There wasn't a lot of, F-bombs on the mound, in a good way, I should say. There was a lot of, pissed off at himself F-bombs, but it definitely feels like he's kind of getting his swag back a little bit. And it feels like, a chip on his shoulder, Walker Buehler, like a pissed off Walker Buehler is usually a good one, especially in October.
Yeah, look, we knew he was going to rise to the moment. We knew that he wasn't going to be intimidated by the NLCS, by playing in New York, by the cold. Everyone was so worried that the media was so worried about the cold and how it would affect Walker Buehler. Again, he wasn't perfect, but all he does is throw up a 0. 4 innings, no runs, unbelievable performance from Walker Buehler. We talked about how good his stuff looked. And yes, it wasn't perfect. The Mets had opportunities and couldn't get to him, but 18 swings and misses from Walker Buehler, literally his best performance of the season in that category. And he saved it for tonight in Game 3 of the NLCS, coming off of a loss, coming off of an off day, traveling across the country in the cold at night, Citi Field. No issues for Walker Buehler, our guy. Big Bob wants to know, over under, how many more shutouts these playoffs? Let me ask you this, Daniel. Do the Dodgers have over or under 1.5 shutouts left in them?
I mean, the way they've been going, I feel like you have to say over. Like I'm going to say under, but like the way they've been going, it would not surprise me if they go over it. Like, shutouts are hard. And, but they've done it in 4 of the last 5 games. Like, that's gotta be like pretty close to a postseason record there. I know they did have one in the middle there where they gave up 7 runs or whatever it was in Game 2, but they shut out the Padres in Game 4 with a bullpen game.
Yep.
Yamamoto was great in Game 5, and the bullpen closed it out. That's 2 shutouts. Shut out the Mets 8-0 in Game 1, and then 8-0 again in Game 3. Like, that's as good as it gets in October. Yeah. Like, obviously, if you don't give up any runs, you're gonna win the game. And just the fact that they've done it in this fashion. It's been fun to watch.
Shame on you for disrespecting the Dodgers. They won 9-0 in game 1, Daniel. How dare you?
My apologies.
Jeez Louise. It's just, come on now. These runs are hard to come by in the postseason, all right, Daniel? We can't be shortchanging these guys.
That's true.
Yeah, look, I mean, if the Dodgers were to win as many games as they could, it would be, 6 more wins that they have in them. To think that they're going to get 2 shutouts in 6 games, especially in the World Series, if they were to get there, and especially against the teams that they could be facing, I think 1 feels like a good number. 2 would be remarkable if they're able to keep up that type of performance. Kevin says, shout out to the OGs, Jeff and Daniel, and the Rally Snake. Are we buying Joe Davis? It felt like it was a little forced. Yeah. A little forced there with the Rally Snake, but any interest in the Rally Snake?
Honestly, no interest. Like I think it was totally forced. Like if they would have came back and won game 2, completely different story. Yeah. But like we're saying they scored a few runs in the later innings, and then of course they win today. But I'm not buying into the Rally Snake.
I just hate snakes. Snakes suck. Like, I don't want anything to do with the snake.
Who does like snakes? Like, no, thank you.
There's probably somebody out there. No disrespect to the snake handlers out there, but snakes suck. JK says, what a shutout. Good idea to bat Ohtani second. Mookie could start for an early Showtime score. We discussed this. I'm curious. He's talking about Ohtani batting second, Mookie kickstarting things. What have you seen from Mookie? He's been right in the crosshairs all postseason. He struggles. He gets robbed of the home run, and he hits 2 more home runs. Then he comes back, and this one, it's kind of been up and down. I mentioned he's a bad call from the umpire and a great play from Lindor away from 2 for 3 with a walk, but it's the postseason. That stuff doesn't count. He's 1 for 4. Where are you at on Mookie? Are we concerned? Are we fine? Is he due? Where are you at?
I don't think there's any concern there, really. Like, I just think hitting in the postseason is hard. Like, obviously, some guys have shown they can make it look easy, but a lot of the times you're facing some of the best pitchers in the league with the best stuff. Like, you might be facing, high leverage relievers in your last 2 or 3 at bats. So I just think it's hard. Not concerned. Like you said, he did take good at bats tonight, and a couple things go, a different way. We're looking at a great night from him. He had, definitely struggled in the first couple games of this series, but look, I just think it's baseball. Like, he's putting in the work he needs to put in to get himself ready for these games. And I think the results will come. They have come already, at points in this postseason, and I think that'll continue. We talked about this lineup thing. I'm just not really making any changes right now. I don't think that's necessary. But yeah, I'm not worried about Mookie. It's just, he's probably not going to put up MVP type numbers in the postseason, but I think the contributions he's made this October have been good enough in my book, and hopefully can continue.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get to some Dave Roberts quotes here, as we've got some post-game quotes over on the Dodger Blue Twitter account, Dodger Blue 1958, on Walker Buehler getting back on track despite not having his best stuff, the stuff he once did. Dave Roberts said, quote, I think it's been a lot of lessons he had to learn and understanding the pitcher that he is today. He says, you look back at June or July, I don't think anyone could have seen him in this position right now. So it's a credit to Walker Buehler. Walker Buehler later was asked about the pitch that he threw to Francisco Lindor being a curveball and not a fastball. In 2018, 1920, I would have thrown a fastball. I mean, there's no, blank. So that alone, Daniel, I think is a great quote because it highlights the change in who he is. His go-to strikeout pitch in the biggest moment of this was not rear back and throw it as hard as you can at the top of the zone and hope for the best. It was a curveball, but it worked.
Yeah, I think that shows that he's definitely learning. And obviously this season was a tough one for him. He's a guy who's used to having success, and he's a guy who's used to just being able, like you said, like to just rear back and throw his fastball by anyone, like whenever he needs to. We've seen that in past postseason outings from him, So he's clearly realized that that's not going to be the recipe for success for him anymore. He's going to have to mix it up a little. He's been relying on the cutter a lot more, the sinker as well. He's not really throwing the straight four seam anymore, which, credit to our guy Scott was kind of on that all year. Like that pitch was just not a good pitch from him from the jump this year. And he's slowly moved away from it. And it seems like he's finally starting to have more faith and more trust in his off-speed stuff. And I think that's down the road. That's only going to help him. Like we'll see, we're only worried about this postseason right now, but I do think He has done a lot to kind of reinvent himself, and I know he's not even under contract past this year, so we're not really worried about past this year at all. But it does make me feel more confident that he's going to be an effective pitcher again. Maybe not the ace that he was. Like I said, he can't just rear back and throw it by guys necessarily, but I do think he could still be a really good pitcher.
Yeah, you want to get fired up. Listen to this quote from Kiké Hernandez when asked about Walker Buehler. There are certain guys who like the spotlight that like playing in October. Those guys, I can attest to that. It doesn't matter what the regular season looks like. When this comes, we start over. We start at 0 and we do it one game at a time. This guy has proven year after year that when there's a big game and the Dodgers need a win, he's the right guy to be on the mound. Hell yeah, Kiké Hernandez is all I've got to say to that.
And it applies to Kiké as well. Like they're very, very similar guys, as far as position player and pitcher goes. Like they both were pretty bad in the regular season, but I think me and you could both agree, like, when it comes to postseason spots and in a big spot, those are two of the guys you want up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So great stuff from Kiké Hernandez in the quotes there. We got a couple more super chats here. Jedi wants to know, how big is Butane's Prove Me deal next year? Look, this is happening on a national stage.
Yeah.
The more he puts these performances out this late in the season, Daniel, the more somebody, and who knows, maybe it's the Dodgers, talks themselves into, hey, this is more of who this guy is the further we get away from all the injuries than the guy we saw 3 months ago. Like, do you buy into that at all, that there's something really actually changing here with Walker Buehler? Or is it possible that he's just got hot at the right time and the true Walker Buehler is somewhere in between this guy and the guy that, disappeared and went to Florida for a couple months?
I definitely think, first of all, he's made himself some money this postseason. Like, he's shown that he could still be an effective pitcher. And I don't think he's gotten back to like his pre-injury level by any means. So I do think he's still probably going to sign a 1-year deal just because, he wants to show that he can be, pretty much this guy for over the course of a whole season to kind of earn that long-term, big money deal. But I do think I'm buying into what we've seen. Like, I think people, and it's understandable, like it's a results-based business, but I do think people were in such a rush to declare him, done or not good anymore. And it's important to remember the guy did not pitch for 2 years, and he's coming off a second Tommy John surgery, which when it comes to pitching, that's as major of a surgery as it gets. Like, you don't expect him to come out in March and look like an ace. Like, that just wasn't going to happen. Like, anyone who had those sort of expectations, it wasn't fair to Walker. Like, it was going to take, I didn't even think it would be this quickly. Like, I thought it would take maybe a couple years before he kind of, refound himself and became a quality pitcher again. And credit to him that he has been able to, find lightning in a bottle here in this postseason. But I do think as he makes more starts and if he goes into the offseason and has a healthy offseason to work on some stuff and whatnot, I do think that he could get back to being a number 2 or number 3 starter. Like, I don't know if he's ever going to be that ace again, but I do think he could be a really effective pitcher. But right now, let's just focus on, this run. He did the job tonight, and I do think the overall confidence in him amongst all of us has definitely grown over these last 2 starts.
Yeah, and I do want to clarify something I'm seeing in the chat. Not everybody on this show declared Walker Buehler cooked 6 months ago, okay? You can talk to some folks tomorrow about who did or did not say that, and lots of people did. I'm not saying that person or those people weren't on an island. The 2 people on your screen right now have been Walker Buehler defenders. I believe the person who's moderating in the chat right now might have been Butane's day one. So we've got some people that said, hey, let's be patient. Let's give this guy some time. Let's not make proclamations about where Walker Buehler is in February and March. Let's see how this plays out. And it was a roller coaster. There weren't a lot of great moments for the Walker Buehler isn't cooked camp. However, it's a good spot to be in the middle of October.
You could check the receipts. Me, Jeff, and Matt have not given up on Walker Buehler at all. Like, there was never a point where any of us did. So check the receipts. Check the receipts.
Big Bob says, just a Freddie appreciation post. He is the man. Can we talk real quick, Daniel? Freddie Freeman made 2 picks at first base that were absolutely monumental. The Ryan Brazier get out of jail free card double play that he induced, and Gavin Lux bounces the ball, and Freddie Freeman having to backpedal to the bag, make the awkward crouch over, lean, and dig unbelievable. Like, I remember there are people saying, oh, hey, with the ankle, like, do we really want him in there? He's a liability. He's not hitting as much. He's a liability on the base pass. For defense alone, for the picks alone, give me Freddie Freeman. This guy is grinding and gutting it out. And by the way, has not been a liability in one single place so far this season. He's not Freddie Freeman, NLCS MVP Freddie Freeman, but he's a guy who's grinding and contributing in every way possible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Total gamer. Like, and I think, you know, he kind of gets labeled as soft a little because he is a sensitive guy and whatnot. But when it comes to, you know, doing everything possible to be on the field every single day, Freddie Freeman does that. And you cannot question the guy's toughness. Like, you know, he's obviously hurting. If this was the regular season, he probably wouldn't be playing right now. Like, he would have missed like at least a month.
Yeah.
And he's gutted it out. He has not complained one bit. You could tell he's compromised. He's not making excuses. And yeah, both of those picks were absolutely massive tonight. Not easy to do, even when you're on two legs, let alone, you know, one. Yeah. So yeah, major credit to him.
How about this stat? Fox Sports MLB just tweeted this out, retweeted by David Vassay. Highest OPS on the road in postseason history, minimum 75 plate appearances. Tell me if you've heard of any of these guys. Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, Carlos Beltran, and Kiké Hernandez. Fourth all-time in road OPS, 75 plate appearances in postseason history.
I will say it probably helps that he had that 3 home run game against the Cubs in, what was that, 2017?
Yeah.
That probably helps, but yeah, I mean, credit to him. He's come up big in the postseason time and time again. So at this point, you know, it's not even surprising anymore. And I'm glad that we finally, like, whether it was the Miguel Rojas injury or whatever, like, we've gotten to the point where Kiké's in the lineup every day, and that's how it should be the rest of the way.
Where are you at on Matthew Moreno's favorite nickname for one particular player in one particular month?
I think I want to hear you say it. What are you talking about?
Well, I'm just saying, I was trying to see, I couldn't remember what it was. And so I was looking on Matt's Twitter page, and then I was like, okay, well, I can't remember what he calls it. And then Kiké hits a home run. I'm like, I think it was Kiké. And then he said, Kiké Hernandez is live. That was what he said. So I don't remember. I don't know. I was trying to find it on his thing, and it's nowhere. It's nowhere on the man's social media account. So maybe somebody can help me out on that one.
I'm reading the comments. They want you to say
Kicktober? Do we call it Kicktober? All right, it seems weird to me, but
we'll take it.
Kicktober with the home run.
Go.
Got it. Yeah, Kicktober. I think we should get Matt to start saying that. He should start tweeting that. He can have it. I'll let him have it since it's not on his social media anywhere. I think he can have it if he wants it, though.
Look, yeah. I'll take that. You were close enough. You're trying, but maybe one day, like, if he hits a World Series homer, maybe we'll get you to like you try to make janitor a thing for like 3 years. So I feel like you could buy into this one for once.
Did you like October? October when Ohtani hit the home run? People didn't like that. I love when I tweet nicknames and people are like, you're trying too hard. I was like, have you heard any of my nicknames that I put out on here? Like, none of them are serious. The janitor, I'm all in on the joke of the janitor. This is a real conversation. My thing with Kicktober is, can we spell it Keek? I know it's not how his name is spelled, but that's how it's pronounced. So I think it should be Keek Tober, and then I think I'm more in. Your thoughts?
And Jonathan is in the chat right now. He just typed the Kicktober the way you spelled it. Yeah. So that's fine with me. I don't care.
Ray says my nickname's Rock, by the way. So maybe I should just keep going with that. We'll double down. We'll go in. Dodger Blue says we can't. We got to check with Matt first, because Matt, who has never tweeted it apparently anytime, guy hits the biggest home run of the night, and Kiké is live is what we get. I know the joke, right? Is this live? I get it. But, like, I mean, you can't get on me for not saying it when in the biggest moment, our guy Matt Moreno can't say it. That's all I'm saying. That's all. I'm going to leave it there. I'm
sure next time he'll put it out there, and then maybe that'll get you to say it on the post-game show.
Yeah,
it needs to be a group effort, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's talk Game 4 briefly, then we'll get to some questions. Jose Quintana on the mound for the Mets, doing a quick look at kind of what his season has looked like. It's kind of interesting how similar he is in some ways to Luis Severino. You mentioned he's a lefty, not a righty. That's the big difference. But once again, a guy who does not get swing and miss and does not have any strikeouts. He's actually worse. He's in the bottom 20% at whiff rate and strikeout rate, 38th percentile for walk rate. And yet, like Severino, he relies on soft contact, which to his credit, Severino got a crap load of soft contact. How many infield groundouts and infield pop-ups, line drives that didn't make it out of the infield did we see tonight? That's what you get from Quintana. One thing that's a massive difference is it's not hard. Severino was throwing 96, 97. Quintana's going to be hovering 90.7 is the average fastball velocity. So we've got a regular old Clayton Kershaw on the mound when it comes to a lefty throwing 89 mile an hour fastballs. But here's the good news, Daniel. The Dodgers are literally the best team in baseball against left-handed pitching this year. Weighted runs created, number 1 in the league. So this is a matchup. I liked Severino because I said, if I'm facing a guy who's not going to strike me out, then the Dodgers are going to be able to attack. They're going to be able to be aggressive because they're not worried about getting to 2 strikes and getting something blown by them. Even more so the case with Quintana, and he's a lefty. Sign me up. I like the Dodgers' chances offensively to score some runs tomorrow.
Yeah, and I also think Quintana's a guy who does, walk some people, and we saw, more patient approach tonight for the Dodgers against, Severino. They got his pitch count up, got him out of there in the 5th inning, which was good. I would expect more of the same tomorrow. We'll see what Quintana's, his command is looking like. Like if he's, locked in on the bottom of the zone, then it could be a big, soft contact type of day. But I do think you got to make sure he's in the zone and take your walks if you have to, get that pitch count up. Like I think the overall strategy in this series is a lot different than the Padres series, because I do think in the Padres series, there was kind of more pressure to score some runs early against those starters because, like the back end of their bullpen was dominant. The Mets, that's not really the case. Like I know Edwin Diaz is still really good, but even he didn't have that great of a season. And outside of him, like we saw Reed Garrett tonight, they were able to get to him. They've gotten to some of their other relievers. So I do think, especially the fact that you're playing 3 days in a row here, if you could kind of get that pitch count up early, get him out of the game by the 5th, like you did tonight, and see those relievers, that would bode well, not just for tomorrow, but also Friday as well.
The one thing I'll say about Quintana, what is different than Severino, I mentioned Severino. Tonight was the first night in his last 5, now 6 starts where he didn't give up at least 3 earned runs. So he had that going for him. Quintana, on the other hand, has been fantastic. He gave up 7 runs on August 20th. That was a stretch in which he had given up 19 runs in 4 starts between August 4th and August 20th. Since that date, August 25th, 0 earned runs, 1 earned run, 0, 0, 0, 2, and then into the playoffs, 0 and 0. So he had a .72 ERA in the month of September. He has not allowed a run in the postseason, and he's allowed just 3 earned runs since August 25th, all the while pitching, 6-ish innings every single time out. So the numbers, 3.75 ERA, 1.25 whip, again, lefty, not a lot of swing and miss. When you look at the performance lately, much like Sean Manaea, while there's not an obvious reason as to what changed, this is a guy who's pitching as well as he's pitched at any point this season by a mile.
And I see some people saying in the chat, he might be due for a little regression there. It sounds like, let's hope. But yeah, it does sound like he's been locked in. He's a guy with a lot of experience. Like I remember the Dodgers facing him when he was on the Cubs back when the Dodgers and Cubs, matched up a couple years in the playoffs. So this is a guy who's been around the block, once or twice. He's not going to be fazed by the moment. So Dodgers are going to have to, come with their A game. Ideally, it would be nice if they could, get some first inning runs. Like tonight didn't happen. The Mookie walk strikeout thing, may have changed some things, but ideally, Shohei, comes out, gets on base with no one on, like to start a game for a change, and they could kind of put some pressure on him early.
Got a couple more super chats here. Humboldt Mike, I saw you left a super chat and didn't leave a question or a comment. If you have something you want to chat about, go ahead and throw that in the chat. We'll put it up here in just a second. Justin with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, sir. We greatly appreciate it. He said, how are you surprised with how dominant the Dodgers pitching has been with 13 pitchers off the roster? Glasnow, Kershaw, Stone, May, Gonsolin, River, Ryan, Sheehan, Hurt, Gratterall, Frasso, Vesia, Kelly, and Shohei Ohtani. Come on, Michael Grove. Maybe we throw in there as well. All off of the roster. That was a joke. Don't worry. All off of the roster. And yet, Daniel, to your point, 4 shutouts in the last 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a little surprising. Like, I don't think we expected this type of dominance. I do think, like, overall, we still feel good about a lot of the guys in that bullpen, like, coming into the playoffs. We felt good about a couple of their starters. Like, I think Walker Buehler has pitched better than we could have imagined. Obviously, Yamamoto and Flaherty in their last starts were both incredible. So I do think it is a little surprising, but I still think they have a lot of talent on that roster.
Yeah.
I still think they have a lot of smart people in the organization when it comes to game planning and coming up with the right plan. Like John Smoltz talked about it, in the later innings, how, a lot of the way they've been matching up their relievers, like, Blake Trinan faces the bottom of the order tonight. Yep. Tomorrow night, he probably gets the heart of the order. They've been doing, smart things like that to put their guys in the best position to succeed. So it's been fun to watch. And hopefully they could just kind of keep it going. Like, we don't expect shutouts necessarily, but this Mets lineup isn't exactly murderer's row, so they should be able to kind of keep them at bay the rest of the series.
Yeah, and hey, we're Daniel and I are the king of no disrespect to ... I want to put some respect on a guy's name that I've crapped on a lot, which is John Smoltz. I actually thought he was fantastic tonight. He made that point about Blake Trinan seeing 8, 9, and 1. He made a point about, hey, you had already gotten him up the inning before, and so you kind of don't want to waste an up and down with a guy like Trinan. I thought Smoltz, who I've crapped on, I want to give him respect because I thought he was really, really good tonight.
Yeah, I agree, and I know I've seen Mets fans accusing, Joe Davis of being biased. I think he's been exceptional as well all postseason, like calling it right down the middle. Obviously, we know inside he's rooting for the Dodgers, but he hasn't really shown it at all. Like, I think he's a pro's pro. So I do agree. Him and Smoltz both have been great, really all postseason. Like, yeah. I do think in past postseasons, I have complained about, some of this stuff that Smoltz says. Like, sometimes he's, always like a back in my day type of guy. You know how it is, but I do think he's been a lot better this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And some folks in the chat disagree, which, hey, you are more than welcome to. Humboldt Mike with the super chat. He says it's that Kiké time of year. It is. I mean, look, this guy had 2 bad plate appearances in game 2 with big spots, and he gets put 9th. And then he hits the biggest home run of the night. And so it's like you can only hold this man down for so long, Daniel. If you thought that the magic was going to run out in game 2, he had a surprise for those folks in game 3. It's unbelievable what this guy does. He turns into somebody completely different.
Yeah, and I saw some tweets tonight that was basically like he's a baseball version of Robert Horry, which I thought was a great comparison. Just always comes up big in the biggest moments. So, yeah, I mean, it feels like he's earned himself a spot on the Dodgers for pretty much as long as he wants it at this point. Like, I don't think anyone's looking at the regular season numbers anymore. You just know this guy's going to come through in October.
Yeah, I'm with you. Risen indeed. Ohtani needs to bat second or third and not lead off. We've talked about this a couple times so far, so sorry if you're just joining us on this one. But our point here is pretty simple. When you win a game 8-0, don't mess with the lineup any more than you need to. Shohei Ohtani put together one of the greatest offensive seasons ever from the leadoff spot, primarily, especially down the stretch when he got hot. So let's not change our mind after a few off days, especially when you consider that those off days weren't exactly that off. And who knows, maybe they put Kiké in that 9-hole, Daniel, so that Ohtani wasn't coming up with the bases empty in front of him. That's the problem is he just hit a home run.
That's right. I mean, Kiké and Tommy Edman at the bottom of the lineup getting on base for Shohei. That's the key. It doesn't matter where Shohei bats in the lineup. The key is just having guys on base when he gets up, just because he's automatic.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you to all the super chats, 2,500 people in here on a Tuesday night. Wednesday night? What day of the week? Wednesday night. We greatly appreciate. These days blend together. It's just an every night
kind really of a deal.
DodgerHeads will be back tomorrow. Scott and Blake, I believe, on the Thursday night show. And then myself and Anthony will be back on Friday. So make sure you stay here. We got content for you every single night. Let's get to some questions here. All caps questions in the chat. Throw that in there. While you're doing that, I do want to make sure you know, right here on the DodgerHeads YouTube page, Dodger Blue 1958 YouTube page, if you have not already, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and as soon as this show is done, on this channel, we've got Walker Buehler's post-game comments, Dave Roberts' post-game comments, Kiké Hernandez's post-game comments, everything you need to continue to enjoy and live with this victory is going to be right here on the Dodger Blue YouTube page. So make sure you check that out. Shout out to our guy, Scott Gearman, who's in the chat as well. Very excited about his guy, Ben Kasparius. I will say this. I've been slow Not for anything Kasperius has done, but more so for what he has not done. I've been slow to jump on the bandwagon that Scott jumped on. I will say this. The stuff was impressive tonight, but more impressive to me, Daniel, and I know it was a blowout, the poise. Like, he just didn't look freaked out even in the slightest tonight. So kudos to Scott's guy, Ben Kasperius, because, again, not only was the stuff good, not only did he get 6 outs, but I was just impressed with the calm demeanor that he had on the mound.
No doubt. And I do think if down the line, like if there is another bullpen game, let's say in a game 6, and you can't get through it with all your high leverage guys, like you need someone to steal an inning or two. I would imagine that Kasperius has moved ahead of Landon Knack in the pecking order. I don't know.
Probably sure, Enriquez too. I don't know if he was ahead or behind, but Enriquez has given up runs in both games he's appeared in.
Yeah, it definitely feels like with this outing, he closed out game 1 as well. Like Ben Kasperius is definitely moving up the pecking order there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's get to some of these questions. We did have another super chat here. Big Bob says, am I the only one who loves hearing the Beat LA chant in every stadium away from home? We must be doing something right. It's like everybody in college football chanting, we want Bama. Like nobody is chanting, we want USC. Or anything like that, So I think it's a badge of honor, Daniel, that the Beat LA chant is a national phenomenon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Some other questions here. Corbin wants to know confidence level 1 to 10 for Yoshi tomorrow night. We also had this from Howie Land. Yamamoto over under 4.2 innings, 2.5 runs. Give me the scouting report. How Daniel Starkand's feeling about Yamamoto coming off of the best start, pretty much of his career, given the stakes in game 5.
I feel like he is a tough guy to predict just because the variance of outcomes is so, wide. Like he could go out and throw 5 shutout innings again. He could not get out of the first and give up 5 or 6 runs. Like we've seen that from him. But I do think obviously coming off that last outing, the confidence level is high. It feels he mentioned that he felt like his mechanics were more synced up in that compared to the game 1. So I do think he's feeling good. He's got the extra day of rest that we all know he needs. So he should be ready to go. 4.2 innings, I think, is a good line just because you're not going to get a ton of length out of him. I do think 5 innings is probably best case scenario. So I'll say he goes 4.1 innings, but he's able to limit the damage, kind of like Walker Buehler tonight, work around some trouble, maybe some guys on base, here and there, but work around it, limit the damage to 1 run. So I'll say, 4.1 innings, 1 run is my prediction.
I'm going 5 innings, 1 run for Yamamoto. I think he's good. I think the Mets offense, look, it's a rhythm sport, and you just go through these extended periods of struggles. And you mentioned it, who in the Mets lineup? I know these are famous last words, but when we played the Padres, every time Tatis came to the dish, Jackson Merrill came to the dish, I was terrified. I just assumed the ball was getting hit for a home run. It felt like even guys like Machado, who might be struggling, they felt dangerous. Lindor's 1 for 11. I mentioned in this series, Vientos had a couple big hits, but Pete Alonso kind of looks a little bit lost at the plate. I know those guys have the capacity, but even after you move past those 3 who maybe sort of scare you, who scares you? So I think Yamamoto has to be feeling confident. He's been in big spots. He's got his normal rest. So give me 5 innings, 1 run for Yamamoto, and I'm going to say my confidence is at an 8 for Yamamoto. Let's see some other ones here. Brian, we appreciate the positivity. You guys have the best Dodgers post-game show of them all. Thank you for all you do. We got a great group of folks over here. Brian, we agree with that. So thank you so much for the kind words on that one. Tim asks, did the Mets err by carrying only 12 pitchers for this series? It didn't make any sense to me, Daniel, why you would take less than the maximum, especially with 3 straight games in games 3, 4, and 5. That said, I don't think they used a ton of guys. Did they only use a few relievers? 2 relievers. Miguel ends up getting them 3 innings. So that must be what they thought is, we're going to push our starters longer, and we're going to go to guys like Miguel to get us 9 outs. But it doesn't make any sense to me unless maybe they just don't have a 13th guy they feel like they would ever put in to a postseason game.
Yeah, the guy they took off the roster was Adam Ottavino, who I feel like has done really well against the Dodgers in the past. He admittedly had a really bad season, so they're probably wasn't much confidence in him there. But I'm with you. Like, especially you're talking about a 7-game series where you're playing 3 days in a row. Like, you want more pitching. Like, you got a DH in your lineup, so it's not like you need, like in the old days of National League Baseball when there's double switches and pinch hitting and whatnot. Like,
yeah,
I understand carrying the extra position player, but in this series where there's DHs and you're expecting to have to use a lot of relievers, I would have preferred an extra reliever there. Like, I think the Dodgers went about it the right way, and I can't speak from a Mets perspective just because I don't know their roster, all that well, but just on the surface, it feels like they should have had an extra pitcher.
3 guys who didn't start took at bats in tonight's game, and that number might have been lower if this game was closer than it actually was. So carrying, whatever that gives them, 5 bench bats. Cool. Like, good for you guys. Enjoy that. Let's see. GI. This is an interesting question. Doc seems to be employing high leverage guys in unusual spots, seemingly to not give the Mets the same look. Do you like it or not? I'm guessing he's referring to Blake Trinan coming in to face the 8-hitter, the 9-hitter, and then the 1-hitter. I think Smoltz made a great point that we already talked about. The fact that the 8 and 9 hitter are probably never going to see Trinan again. And so Trinan gets 3 outs, but without giving a bunch of guys a bunch of looks. But I actually thought in that spot, I tweeted, I think this tells me Lindor and Vientos are the only 2 guys in the entire lineup that the Dodgers are afraid of. And if they had put a different reliever in for that moment, that person would have had to pitch to Lindor. So if you wanted Trinan versus Lindor, he had to start the inning. I was almost surprised that they didn't bring him back out to face Vientos because I think Trinan is just that much better than anybody else the Dodgers have out there right now. But even all of that aside, Dave Roberts has said, hey, I don't want them to get looks at key guys multiple times, and he's done an incredible job of preventing that from happening.
Yeah, for sure. And what I do really like is that there's no set roles in this bullpen. Like, there's no closer. Like, it could be anyone at any time. Like, it could be Kopech could be the closer, or Kopech might be pitching in the 4th or 5th inning like we saw tonight. Like, I do think, like you said, they're clearly, like, the top of the order is really all they're worried about. And that's why, like Dave Roberts even said in his interview, like, we're getting Kopech ready for Lindor here. So yeah, I do think, credit to Dave, credit to all the front office, like everyone who's kind of put this plan together. They've done a really good job. And of course, you look better when you get the results you want. Like, if Kopech comes in that 5th inning and gets rocked, everyone's probably saying, why are you going to Kopech there? Or why aren't you leaving in Buehler? Whatever the case may be. But, when guys come through, you look like a genius. And I do think if you criticize for, Dave for when things go wrong, then you have to give him credit, when things go right, like they have been. So yeah, I think they've done a really good job all around.
My guy, Jeff Kopstein on Facebook is asking, Jeff, are you still going Dodgers in 6 or are you changing it to 5 after tonight? I'll stick with 6 and I hope I'm pleasantly surprised. We'll say that. I think it's really hard to win 3 games in a row, all of them on the road against the team, even if I think the Dodgers are set up better with their best pitchers coming up, with a better lineup and with a bullpen that is in far better shape than the Mets bullpen. I just think it's really hard for things to sort of all line up. That said, the Dodgers were pretty frustrating to watch for the first 7 innings of this game and then ended up winning 8-0. So that makes me feel a little bit better because I feel good about Yamamoto. I feel good about Jack Flaherty, and heck, I feel good about Walker Buehler if he has to pitch again in this series. Let's hope he doesn't. That would mean 7 games. But if he does, I feel good about that. Jonathan wants to know, and I'll let you answer this. Did we see signs of life from Will Smith today, Daniel?
I mean, I think we did. I think he had some nice at-bats. I didn't like, there was one at-bat where he chased a few pitches that weren't even close, but he ended up putting a solid at-bat together. I think he hit the comebacker or whatever that ended up.
Hey, RBI single, baby. RBI single in the box score, Daniel.
Look, he doesn't look great by any means, but I do think, better at-bats. And I think he has hit some balls hard, like throughout the postseason that he hasn't really seen any results for. But, I think that moving him down a couple spots in the lineup was a good call. And I think, he's probably not, he's not first half Will Smith where, he's the all-star who is one of your best hitters. But if he could just kind of contribute a little here and there, with all the other guys you got going in the lineup, I think that'll be fine.
2 for 4 with a walk. Will Smith's final line tonight. Let's get one more last question from Dodger Blue here. How about Butane telling JD to swing the bat? JD Martinez walks against Walker Buehler, and then he walks off the mound screaming, "Swing the bat" at him. Positive. I'm all in. I'm all in on Buehler just screaming at whoever wants it.
I'm also all in because it worked. Like JD came up the next at bat and chased two sweepers or whatever outside of the zone, and Walker got the strikeout there. So I don't know if it was in his head, like, hey, I need to swing the bat. Walker told me to swing the bat. Probably not, obviously, but I love it. Like, that's kind of Walker's attitude. Like I said earlier, like it feels like he got his swag back a little bit, and he wasn't trying to disrespect JD there. Like it was more just friendly competition. Like, hey, let's swing the bat. Former teammates, of course. Yeah. So I love it.
And by the way, I see some people in the chat, and I'm not going to miss an opportunity to give my guy Will Smith some credit. 4 shutouts in 5 games. Will Smith has been the catcher for all of those. So there has to be some credit given to him. And I believe it was even Walker Buehler who said post game, or maybe it was Dave Roberts, excuse me. But one of them just saying like how connected Will Smith feels to the pitching and the calling and the execution defensively. He's nominated for a Gold Glove this year. He's a finalist for it. And so kudos to Will Smith, because offensively hasn't been there, but pitch calling perspective, which, all the Austin Barnes years have been telling me how important that is in the postseason. Let's give my guy credit. Did Austin Barnes, Daniel, ever have 4 shutouts in 5 games? Let's get Matt Moreno on that. Moreno, I think if you're in there in the chat somewhere, can you tell me if Austin Barnes has ever had 4 shutouts in 5 games in the postseason?
I'm just going to go ahead and guess no. I don't know if anyone has had that, but I do want to kind of piggyback off that and do give, Will a lot of credit, because it's not like it's just starters throwing 7 shutout innings every game and then your setup guy and your closer. Like he's been managing a lot of arms. Like there's some games where it's been 7-8 guys pitching, some nights like tonight where it's a guy like Ben Kasperius closing out, and Will's probably only caught him like a handful of times. So yeah, I do think he deserves a lot of credit there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So good stuff from the Dodgers all around. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't see Matt respond. Maybe he's Googling it. He's checking the game logs. Maybe. We'll see. Anyways, hey, everybody, we appreciate you joining us here on the DodgerHeads post-game show presented by DodgerBlue.com. That is Daniel Starkand. I'm Jeff Spiegel. As I said, be sure to be back with us tomorrow night. Scott and Blake will be here doing a post-game show after Yoshinobu Yamamoto's Game 5 start. Hopefully a good one for the Dodgers. Hopefully another victory. Game 4. Hopefully another victory for the Dodgers, and they can extend this NLCS lead to 3-1. Again, 4 innings, no runs allowed from Walker Buehler, home runs from Kiké Hernandez, Shohei Ohtani, and then Max Muncy. A great game all the way around. That is Daniel Starkand. I am Jeff Spiegel. Folks, enjoy the rest of your night. Dodgers up 2-1. Go Dodgers.